You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet. That you showed up was written in my palm. You are a statement, explode like a bomb. I get to push myself to victory. You make me winner. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. Yes, I'm the winner, yeah. 'Cause I'm the winner, yes. Am I awake or am I dreaming? So far gone, I won't look back. And when I move, there ain't no stopping me. You're pushing me up to the top. I saw the clouds looking angry, but then the sky reached my mind. And when I space out, I see the possibilities unfolding the way that I want. That you showed up was written in the palm. You are a statement, explode like a bomb. I get to push myself to victory. You make me winner. You cut me loose and set me free. You cut me loose. You make me win in every way. Win in every way. You show me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You show me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. Yes, I'm the winner, yeah. 'Cause I'm the winner, yes. 'Cause I'm the winner, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, yes, I'm the winner, yeah. I can taste your words. I can taste your I can taste your words. I can taste your
Hey, hey, hey. Yeah, it's Sunday Live with the Jams. I'm so glad that we're all here on Spiritual Direction and Soul Cares. Sunday Live every Sunday at 2 p.m. Tell me how you're doing, either on the broadcast or the replay. Put it in the chat. Let me know how things are going. It is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, or however you say it around here. We are living our lives. Kids are going back to school. A lot of us who have kids are getting back into that rhythm or have gotten into that rhythm. We got the kids back to school. So there's just a lot going on as always. But we are so glad that we're together every Sunday at Sunday Live. It is awesome to connect, and we are kicking off a whole new journey. We're looking at thriving in uncertainty. It starts today. We're looking at 7 different strategies to help us kind of like navigate the reality of life. So it's going to be good. So I'm so glad that you're with us today, either on the broadcast or on the replay. Tell us how you're doing and how your life is going and what you're hoping for as we go through this series, as we start looking at these different strategies for facing and thriving in uncertainty. And always, come and invite friends to join us in our growing community over at the Facebook page, Facebook, spiritualsoulcare.com. With Spiritual Soul Care, rather, we are doing lots of fun stuff over there. And I'd really like to start talking more with y'all about ways that we can connect more there, other things that we can be doing. One of the things that we just launched a couple weeks ago was midweek meditation. That's every Wednesday, every other Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Next one is this Wednesday, September 15. It's about an hour where we do a time of guided meditation, maybe some writing and sharing as well. It's awesome. It's on Zoom. You can get all the information over at the Facebook group under events. And as always, you can go check out our Spiritual Soul Care program that we offer at spiritualdirectionandsoulcare.com. We already got a comment here from Betsy King Down. Says, cheers for Daniel today. He's just about to hit submit on another professional certification today. He's so smart and hardworking. Yeah, Daniel. We're so excited for you. That's awesome. We are with you. That's so great. I'm so glad people are progressing and growing and reaching and becoming and thriving. So it is awesome. Congrats, Daniel. We're really excited for you. Can't wait to see how things keep working out. As we get ready to dive in to our first session on thriving in uncertainty, let's begin with our most basic spiritual practice that we do every week, where we open to the Spirit. We open to the Spirit of God with breath and stillness, a time of guided centering and prayer. So wherever you are, let's just get comfortable and maybe let your shoulders drop and take a breath in and out. And in and out. This is a moment in the midst of this past week and going into this next week where we come and give ourselves the gift of stillness, of being present to what is, to reality. That's a lot of what we're talking about today. And we rest and we breathe. And even if it's noisy where you are, whatever, if there are other distractions, just acknowledge those and let them walk by. It's fine. It's sometimes helpful to imagine a blue sky. And each thought or feeling or concern or distraction is just a cloud going by without judgment. We go, oh, that was my thought. Yes, that is what I need to work on this week, or I need to clean the bathroom or do the laundry, or maybe even big things that are carrying with you. Just acknowledge them as what they are and let them pass by and continue to breathe. So often when we rest and breathe, when we think of coming to stillness, we think of it as stepping out of reality. But in reality, it's going to the most basic parts of our reality. That we are here, that we are present, that no matter what else is going on, we breathe. We ourselves are a world that is experiencing thoughts and feelings and interactions. We are just simply present to it, getting down to the most basic building blocks of the lives we live, which is being here, being embodied, just breathing, just maybe sensing the temperature of the air on your skin. It's cool in my house. I can feel the temperature on my skin. And we breathe and we simply are. We bring kind awareness to our breath. We bring kind awareness to our posture. Kind awareness to where we may be carrying our thoughts or stress. Simply acknowledging it, not trying to fix it, not trying to change it. We just are. And we breathe. Holy Spirit, guiding presence. We are open. We receive this moment. And we rest in your presence, trusting that you are good and goodness and healing is ours and that we are loved. Amen. 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 Well, how do you feel? How do you feel about this opening to the Spirit? How do you feel now that we have given ourselves the gift of stillness? We've made space literally in our bodies as we breathe. Making space for what is, making space for this moment, making space for ourselves, free of judgment, free of evaluation, free of bringing kind of the narratives that we bring to the table always. Betsy, I know you're on here. Betsy, you've said we've got to stop moralizing about the ways we give ourselves comfort. I think that's wisdom. You've said that before in other conversations. right? For me, I find coming to stillness, opening to the spirit is a way that practically teaches me to have a moment where I'm not evaluating, where I'm not laying over a good, bad, right, wrong, you know, holy, evil framework on what I'm doing, right? And who I am in this moment, you know? So, yeah, tell me what you think as we start to talk about our first session today in thriving in uncertainty. Thriving in uncertainty, we're going to be talking about don't resist reality. Kind of what I'm getting at with what we're talking about with this moment of stillness is one of the ways we kind of activate that. It's this basic tool that helps us settle into what our reality is in this moment and to not resist it, because our resistance oftentimes is the source of profound pain. It's a source of profound frustration, right? Terry says ambiguity is acceptable and helpful. Yes, but how many people don't think so, right, Terry? Ambiguity is acceptable and helpful. That I love that word, acceptable. We're going to talk about being accepting, maybe, and accepting reality and acceptance as a strategy. But like, you know, like I love that you're saying it's acceptable, right? Because we have to give, we have this deep moralizing impulse in us, right? And so saying it's acceptable, right? Helps kind of answer that impulse in us that goes, ugh, you know, wants to think that if it's unpleasant, it must be bad, you know, or evil or morally wrong, right? You know, so I love that. Ambiguity is acceptable and helpful. Helpful, yeah. We might talk about that a little bit more, you know. Betsy says, Joshua Abraham Asher says that Sabbath and the moments of rest like the one we just did are almost geographical realities. If God lives in the realm of time, when we set apart time to just exist, there we encounter God in a different, more profound way. All right, you guys, you're starting this session with both barrels, bringing the wisdom. I love it. I love it. That's so true. It's so true. We experience God in a different, more profound way. And I think partly because we're experiencing ourselves in a very different and profound way, right? We're giving ourselves a space that is full of grace and spaciousness. I was just talking this morning with Jill, you know, we were talking about how do we connect with God, right? And say God has grace, right? God has healing, right? God has unconditional love. How do you connect with God, right? Apart from the people who seem to have the corner on the language about grace and unconditional love, right? We were talking about like what happens when we get lost in that that not shallow, but like collapsing ground, right? When you've connected so much of your God understanding to the community of people who say that they have the corner on the God language, right? And where does that leave you when you start to experience not only lack of unconditional love and grace, but when you experience harm then as well, right? It's inextricably tied up then to God, right? You can't really make a strong distinction. But you know, that whole don't, you know, God, I love you, but I hate your kids kind of stuff, right? Like that breaks down after a while because, you know, God is responsible for God's kids. Right? So where does that leave you, right? It leaves you uncertain. It leaves you with an ambiguity about even where you are with God. And so when we come to stillness, when we do practices like this, right? It helps us reconnect with God, right? It helps remind us of the actual reality that God is present and with us and within always, right? Judy says, maybe the change in perception to ambiguity is acceptable and helpful is what helps us enjoy the ride. Yes. And like, this is one of the things I might say a little later is like, that's really what spirituality is, right? That's what the spiritual journey is. That's what healing is, right? Is helping discover and utilize ways to cope and maybe even enjoy what is not controllable in our lives, right? I love that. Yeah. Betsy says, decide that you are allowed to dole out to yourself anything that God says is yours. He gave you the keys to the gumball machine. Crank that bitch and don't wait for anyone else to do it for you. Assertive spirituality. I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah. Like you have to take a hold of your journey for yourself, right? And there are all these resources waiting. There's all these resources within, right? It's so true. Terry says healing trauma happens when we allow the unknown to be okay. The black and white system of justice doesn't work, and expecting my way to be the right way leaves me hurting. Yes, I'm happier in the unknown because it leaves room for hope. Right. That's right. And it leaves room too. It helps teach you to let go of the preconceived notions of how this, whatever your this is, has to work out for me to be okay, right? That like we may have our own understanding of those things, but also sometimes that preconceived cognitive commitment to it has to be a certain way for it to be okay. It has to be a certain way for it to be healing for me. It has to end up working out like this, or else God isn't real, or God doesn't love me, or whatever it is, right? Like that actually is closing down our imagination to possibilities. That's closing us down to other ways that it could play out, other avenues to heal, other avenues to discover and experience hope, all these things, right? I know I'm on a journey, right? I'm on a journey of trying to figure out what of the precious language in my spiritual upbringing do I want to hold on to that still is true, that still rings true, and what of it no longer rings true to me because it is so deeply connected to the way people have acted, right? We're all on this journey, right? Judy says to Betsy that the comment about Joshua Abraham Heschel is a really profound thing. She says maybe meditation is a portal that cuts through time, keeps us grounded despite the occasional roller coaster ride feeling when we let go of security aisles and free fall into God. Yes. This is a huge thing. I mean, we're not even to my stuff yet. And this is so good, you guys. Like people, if you're watching on this on the replay, man, you guys need to get here on Sundays because there is rich conversation happening. Y'all need to start inviting people, you know? It's like this, it's especially hard to let go of security idols and free fall into God, as Judy says. It's especially hard if the whole construction of God in the religious system is one that prioritizes security, right? That says that somehow in the face of all that is uncontrollable, you can gaslight yourself into believing that somehow there's a way, whether it's more faith or doing enough good things or going to church enough or having your quiet time or whatever it is, right? That you can get to a space where you can be mature enough or whatever the words are, right? Have access to Holy Spirit power or whatever, to be in a completely controlled, secure space, that somehow you'll be inoculated from life, right? Faith and religion at its best is not a vaccine against the realities of life, right? But when the priority of a religious faith or spirituality is being right? Getting all the right answers, having a God who is so meticulously sovereign that every blade of grass is grown by God and every tornado that happened was ordained by God's glory and every bridge that fell was pushed down by the finger, right? This is all high language, God language to help us feel secure in the face of what is patently uncontrollable. See, right? That God is not God. That God is the security idol that Judy is talking about, that conception of God, right? Betsy's making a recommendation that the book The Sabbath is stretching and enlightening. Who wrote it? Is it by Heschel? Put it in the notes. Let us know if the book The Sabbath that you're talking about is by Rabbi Heschel. And Betsy says, so many folks are in it for the security. It's there, but not the way people are looking for. It's a North Star, not a stormless sea or even a season. Captain, oh my gosh. You guys, I'm so glad I showed up today because y'all are teaching me. I love that. The book Sabbath, The Sabbath is by Heschel. Go pick it up. Let it stretch you. Let it shape you. Let it form you. Let the wisdom of this community be shared. Go pick this up. But yeah, Betsy, you've got it. Like the security of faith, of spirituality is not rooted in a storm. It's not a stormless sea. It's not, the journey of faith is not to take you to a place of perfect blue skies and storm. It's the North Star, right? It's a North Star. It's the sense of that which is unmovable beyond that guides us through. That which is unmovable beyond which guides us through, right? And as you guys know, for me, that North Star is love, right? That North Star really is love. Yeah. Oh man, you guys, we haven't even gotten to my material yet, but we kind of are. This is so good. So over the next, so we're kicking off this thriving in uncertainty, right? In the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at 7 strategies that help us do that. And this stuff is grounded in the work of a woman named Christine Carter, Dr. Christine Carter. And as we go through this journey, we're going to get some insanely practical tools for the basic reality. This is a basic reality that's built into life: uncertainty, right? Ambiguity. And remember, like I like to say, the fundamental mistake we make when we're talking about the spiritual life is that we think we're talking about something other than human life, right? Other than human life. So uncertainty is a feature of human life, right? Ambiguity is baked in, right? But uncertainty and ambiguity, this reality that's just part of our journey of our life, it affects us to our core. It goes to our human core. You can call it your soul, whatever you want to call it, but it's the core, the core of who we are. It's hard for us, right? It's a source of pain. It also can be a source of healing, as you guys have started to get to as well, right? So what should we do, right? What should we do when everything feels so out of control? Yesterday was 9/11. We watched some movies about 9/11. We were remembering that day because we're old enough to, Jill and I got married exactly 1 month before September 11th. And I was just reflecting yesterday about how we all experienced profound collective trauma. And then we as a nation for 20 years went out and tried to purge that trauma from ourselves by going on and traumatizing a whole bunch of other people, right? And coarsening the commons of how we interact and talk and conceive of what it is to be a society together, So trauma inflicted pain and then we started inflicting more pain on each other to try to somehow pass that pain out of ourselves, right? It's huge, right? So what should we do? What should we do when everything feels out of control, right? Because living with uncertainty is hard. It's hard. And like we've been talking about, we crave information. We crave information about the future, right? And getting ourselves security and certainty, right? Right? We crave that information in the same way that we crave food, the same way we crave sex or other primary rewards. Our brains already perceive ambiguity as a threat, right? And they try to protect us by diminishing our ability to focus on anything other than creating certainty, right? That's what so much of religion is, right? Where that gets toxic is when we don't realize that, or that we stay aware of our tendency to collapse our search for understanding into the people who lead it or traffic in the words to us, right? And we give them power, right, over us. But sometimes, and maybe always, it's more effective for us to attempt to create certainty. This is what Terry's getting at by saying ambiguity is acceptable and can be helpful, right? And though we might be, our evolutionary processes have kind of like oriented and rigged our brains to like have this kind of default resistance to uncertainty, right? We can never really know what the future will bring, regardless of what we are pushing ourselves toward. And so during improbable situations, right, like 9/11 and the things that follow after, or this pandemic for the last almost 18 months, these things massively disrupt our routines, utterly destroy our best laid plans, right? Like all these things, right? We need to learn to live with ambiguity. We need to learn to live with it. There's a mathematician named John Allen Paulos who says uncertainty is the only certainty there is. Knowing how to live with insecurity is the only security. Knowing how to live with insecurity is the only security. Isn't that interesting? It's really, really interesting. You guys are firing away here on comments. So let's go over there before we keep diving in. Judy says, as I evolve in my spirituality, I realize Sabbath isn't a day of the week. It's resting in the midst of our uncertainty. Yes. How to live with insecurity is the only certainty, because our mystery that we can't see clearly on earth is much more substantial than what we perceive is God. And Betsy says, this is one of the pieces I found interesting in Heschel's work. Let me see here. It says Judaism actually teaches that it's the actual seventh day that matters. I found the viewpoint fascinating and enjoyed reading about it. It definitely opened up my curiosity. Judy says, I think day is an allegory in scripture and 7 refers to the last stage of enlightenment. But of course, I am uncertain. That is correct. Yes, I love the way you guys are interacting. I love that we're bouncing off this stuff. And I love the way it flows with what we're doing here and talking about today, So as we talk about this, right? Like, so how can we best cope when everything feels so out of control? How can we cope when everything feels out of control? Well, like I've said, there are 7 strategies, and we're going to talk about one of them today. But the 7 strategies are: don't resist reality, invest in yourself, find healthy ways to comfort yourself, don't believe everything you think, pay attention. This is a theme throughout all of spirit. I don't care if you're coming from an integralist vibe, if you're, holding on to crystals, like you're working in the deep Christian mystical tradition, if you're coming from Islam, I don't care. There is this theme through all spiritual systems that talk about attentiveness, awareness, right? Pay attention is the 5th strategy, right? So this is kind of like this is awesome. 5 is pay attention. 6, stop looking for someone to rescue you. Okay. And 7, find meaning in the chaos. The meaning is in the making. So make the meaning, you guys. I'll give you a little preview there for week 7 right there, right? Yeah, I love these steps too. Don't resist, invest in yourself, find healthy ways to comfort yourself, but also don't moralize about the way you comfort yourself, right, Betsy? Don't believe everything you think. Pay attention. Stop looking for someone to rescue you. Find meaning in the chaos. So let's talk more about number 1, which is don't resist reality. Okay. Now, there's no doubt we are living through challenging times. Yes? Right? You're like, duh, right? Clearly. But resisting this current reality, whatever it is we're facing, the pandemic and all the other caca that you might be handling, like I've got pandemic, and then I have caca that I am trying to navigate. I don't know why I'm saying caca, because I've said shit before on this thing, but I have a whole bunch of stuff that I'm carrying, right? And trying to navigate and understand, right? And grieving, right? On top of the pandemic, right? But resisting that, getting stuck in a rut of wishing it wasn't, right? That's not going to help me recover or learn or grow or even feel better. And honestly, y'all, like as much as we're about growth and healing and deepening ourselves in spiritual direction and soul care, all that, right? Like there's all room for that. And I'm all in on it. I do it every Sunday. That's why I talk about it. I gotta say, like, you can't put just feel better way down on the list. Like most days, I just want to feel better. Okay. Like, and that's not shallow. That's not getting into the deep stuff, like, people will talk about joy versus happiness. I want to be happy. I don't think it's wrong to want to be happy. Right. I want to feel better and be happy. I think those are legitimate desires in the spiritual journey, and resisting all the things that are happening won't help me get there, right? I mean, ironically, resistance to reality, a lack of acceptance is what we're going to kind of get at. But like, ironically, resistance, the thing that we think is the thing within us that can say, I can figure it out. I can think it out. If I get on the phone and I tell that one person off, they will just be like amazed by the weight of my arguments and they'll stop being an asshole. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, right? No, our resistance actually prolongs our pain and prolongs the difficulty because it amplifies all the challenging emotions we're feeling, right? There's this real truth to the aphorism, right? You hear this a lot in the coaching world, right? That what we resist persists, right? It's just, there's some truth in that, right? And there's an alternative to resistance. There's an alternative. Instead of resisting, we practice acceptance. That's part of the reason why coming to stillness is the most basic spiritual practice, because just for a few moments, and you can stretch yourself to go more than the 3 minutes we normally do, 3 to 5 minutes we normally do on Sundays, you can get to the place where you're in that space for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Some people do it for an hour. You know what I mean? You can grow your spiritual capacity to learn how to accept that moment at its most deepest level, accepting I am here, I am present to this, I am breathing. That's not an escape from reality. Like I said, that's the most basic granular level of reality that you're learning to dive into and inhabit, right? We can practice acceptance. We can learn acceptance. We can experience acceptance as an alternative to resistance, right? Judy, going back to the earlier said, learning how to live with the uncertainty is the only certainty. What a great motto. I've sensed that is my next step in spiritual growth. But right now, watch me cling to the cliffside, sliding down like a cartoon character, clutching to the grass blades. Yeah, we want to hold on to whatever we can, right? And that's what that resistance is about, right? Our resistance is about trying to hold on to what we know, right? Betsy says joy versus happiness. Lots of eye roll emojis here. Such a Christian, ignore your intuition and feelings, gaslighting, grooming bull. Yep, it is. It's a way to problematize what is not problematic. Can I just tell you that's one of the worst things that I think religion teaches people is to create a problem or to moralize about something that is not moral. It's just what is, right? Instead of fundamentally approaching people with what you think and feel is always somehow suspect, as opposed to saying, well, maybe you don't believe everything you think, but why are you thinking that? These are windows into things to press in, not to suppress and say, you're bad for thinking it. You're bad for wanting that. You're bad for feeling that, right? It's like, don't let those things become your full reality, but say, these are markers, these are windows, these are clues, these are road signs to what is truly needed within you, right? And sometimes it ain't that deep. Sometimes it ain't that deep. Sometimes you're just mad because somebody did something that is mad, angry making, you know what I mean? And it ain't that deep. It's not about your insecurity or how you need to feel validated. It's like, it's just, you told the person not to park on the grass and they parked on your grass, you know what I mean? And they broke the head on your sprinkler system. It's not that deep. There's nothing in play here about needing to feel respected. And I just, the reason why I got so mad at it is because my mom always invalidated my feelings. And so here you are parking in my yard again and maybe it's not that deep. Maybe it's just that dude drove on your yard when you said not to. And there's nothing wrong with being mad at that, right? You know what I mean? But we get this like thing where we want to make it all so much deeper, right? You know what I mean? And sometimes it's there. That's why we need each other to ask the questions and to be there, right? And maybe to give each other permission to say, you know what, it probably isn't that deep, right? And to validate and hear us when we say, it's not that deep for me. It's just I'm frustrated by what's frustrating. We don't have to excavate the interior geology of my soul to figure out what was the presenting issue in second grade that makes me mad now at 48. You know what I mean? That's not always helpful, right? That's why we're doing this work, right? Judy says, yes, God loves us and wants us to be happy. Acceptance, not assumption, and judgment is so much a part of that. Oh my gosh, you said acceptance just as I did. Good. With synchronicity, we're lined up here. I love this community, y'all. So we have this alternative, right? Instead of resisting, we practice acceptance, right? There's a research by a psychologist named Kristen Neff and her colleagues. They show that acceptance, particularly self-acceptance, is a counterintuitive secret to happiness. Acceptance is about meeting life where it is and moving forward from there. Acceptance is about meeting life where it is and moving forward from there, right? Because acceptance allows us to see the reality of the situation in the present moment, right? So it frees us up to move forward rather than remaining paralyzed or being made ineffective by uncertainty, fear, or argument. Okay. So to practice acceptance, we surrender our resistance to a problematic situation and also to our resistance to the emotions about that situation, right? For example, you might find yourself in a situation to be particularly challenging right now. Instead of criticizing or blaming yourself or even other people involved, right? Criticizing and blaming, those are two tactics that are about resistance, right? If you're doing that, you're in resistance mode, right? Instead of doing that, you can practice the gift of stillness, meditation. Come to midweek meditation this Wednesday, right? To help you come to a place of even a few moments of just accepting that reality, right? Accepting reality. This doesn't mean that you won't feel frustrated. Doesn't mean you won't feel disappointed or saddened by the state of things, right? A big part of acceptance is accepting how we feel about difficult circumstances and difficult people in our lives, right? But allowing our challenging situation to be as it is right now and acknowledging our feelings about it puts us in a better position to move forward, right? Now, to be clear, acceptance is not the same as resignation. Accepting a situation doesn't mean it will never get better. We aren't accepting that things will stay the same forever. We're only accepting whatever is actually happening in the moment, right? It's a compassionate, judgment-free way of saying that is happening. It's a fact. It's reality. That's just reality, right? I mean, think of visualizing a sky and the circumstances, feelings, right, are all simply clouds passing by, right? This situation has really hurt me. That's the reality. And now I'm sad. I'm feeling sad. That's reality too, right? It's amazing how just that little, how it just steps you out just enough, right? And we can work to make whatever we're dealing with better or happier. It doesn't mean that you are resigned to it. You can still work at making things better, happier, while at the same time allowing that reality right now or the relationship or situation is complicated and maybe it will get better and maybe it won't, right? So practicing acceptance in the face of difficulty is hard, but it's also the most effective way for you to move forward. Because, as always, this is about mindset, right? Everything starts there. Don't resist reality. Don't resist reality. Don't get caught up in blaming and criticizing. Do the soul work, the mental soul and mental body, soul, emotional, psycho soul work of just naming, accepting, saying what is, judgment free, right? Like I said, I faced some really hard stuff, and I found myself this past year saying through tears things like, I'm just tired of being sad, right? I'm tired. Oh, I'm tired of being hurt, right? And like most people, I view the opposite of being sad as happiness, right? And most of us think of happiness as this fulfillment of personal desires and pleasure, or like the absence of struggle, right? That happiness is somehow the absence of struggle or conflict or pain, right? And unfortunately, that definition of happiness describes something that is kind of temporary and fleeting, right? And that kind of collides on with head on with our expectation that happiness should be permanent, right? Like it's another that's a resistance thinking reality, because that's saying that somehow something that cannot be permanent, we somehow cling to the idea that it could be if we just found the right the right formula. If we found the algorithm, the psycho-emotional spiritual algorithm, it'll be permanent, right? No, right? We freak out thinking something is wrong with us because we aren't happy, right? I want to be happy, right? I'm tired of being sad, but that doesn't mean when I'm not that there's something wrong with me, right? But we think that we judge, and that's judgment, right? This is part of resistance behavior. I'm judging myself. I don't feel happy. I must have done something, right? Or I'm failing at something, or I'm missing something, right? So if our expectation of life is perpetual happiness, we're going to find ourselves continually frustrated, because life is full of difficult circumstances, right? And painful emotions and challenging people, right? And sometimes we're those challenging people for other people. Real talk, right? Right? So in psychology, right, they double down on acceptance, and they call it actually radical acceptance. Radical acceptance. Basically, radical acceptance is accepting all of what is instead of resisting reality, right? It's just what it is. Like this morning, Jill and I were on a walk and we were talking about stuff, and we were talking about, being able to say, this situation sucks. That's reality. I'm sad about that. That's reality. And it's amazing just saying that, how that breaks open something, right? You may not think you resist reality. A lot of us don't think we're resisting reality, but we do, right? Radical acceptance really involves accepting your circumstances, accepting your emotions, accepting your past, accepting your pain, right? Just simply saying where you are without judgment. And so we add to our pain. We add to our pain when we resist. We add to our pain when we criticize, when we blame, when we judge. We resist reality. We resist our emotions. We resist our circumstances. And, one way we resist is by dwelling on how awful something is, right? And wishing it were different, right? Or sometimes just desperately praying for God to intervene and change it, right? And only you can determine if the way you're praying is helpful or not, right? Only you can determine if you're needing to, if you are in your situation needing to pray for change, because I don't want to ever say that it's wrong to pray for change, right? But only you can determine if you're using prayer as a tool of unhealthy resistance, right? As opposed to a pathway to a kind of acceptance that helps you move forward, right? So only you can know if you need to pray for change in a situation, pray for someone else, all that, or pray for surrender to that moment, right? Got some comments here. Betsy says, my therapist says, what happened to me is not okay, but it happened and I am okay. Woo! Yeah, put that on a shirt right there. Yes. And Terry says, we think sadness is bad, but it's truly just another emotion to process and learn from. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with this. It's kind of like in hospitals when we talk about pain, like we have a whole ethic of pain control and avoidable, controllable, unnecessary pain should be cared for, right? But also pain in the hospital setting is also a vital sign that kind of helps us figure out what's going on, right? And so I think that totally correlates with what Terry's saying, right? We think sadness is bad, but sadness can be an emotional vital sign to give you a better window into what's going on, right? So how do we resist, right? How we resist versus how do we radically accept? So take a moment right now, right? Just take a moment and think about what situation or emotion are you resisting in your life right now, right? Take a moment. Think about that. What's the situation you're resisting? What's the emotion or emotions that you're resisting? What are those? Right? How do you see yourself resisting? What's your resistance tactic, right? Are you a criticizer? Do you blame? Do you start judging? Do you find that everything else unrelated to it is something that you're just constantly criticizing and complaining about? Everything becomes a bigger deal. Everything else has become a bigger deal. Stuff that isn't a big deal suddenly is a big deal with you and all your loved ones now all the time, right? Because you're kind of like have pushed this resistance because you know that you can't change it, right? So you're pushing it into other stuff, right? You're sad about the situation at work and and it's out of your control and that makes you mad, but you think that you should be above it somehow. So you come home and you yell at your kids because dirty dishes are in the sink. I don't know. You know, how are you resisting? What's the situation or emotions you're resisting? How are you resisting? What's your kind of resistance approach? What's your go-to tactic when you resist, right? Betsy says, eat those feelings. Yes, I ordered a whole lot of hot wings last night under the guise of it being a Michigan football game. But man, I was eating those feelings. Yes. Some of our tactics are not outward, like judgment, criticizing, blaming, transferring, projecting, right? Some of our tactics are going inward on ourselves, right? Eating those feelings, right? Having one too many drinks before you go to bed, right? Betsy says to eat those feelings, preferably in the form of tacos. Yes, that is my go-to. It's like, I can't right now. Somebody send tacos, right? Make me a burrito, somebody, right? Judy says, I think radical acceptance works because radical love somehow, at the end of the day, balances or undoes our suffering. It's not that the reality isn't there anymore, but we are now viewing it from a clearer perspective, having removed resistance. That resistance was what also obscured our way through or out. Yes. And we will talk about that in a moment. Yes. Radical acceptance always involves accepting reality for what it is, even if it isn't what we want it to be. Right? So here's just a couple things to clarify. There's a couple things to know though, right? Radical acceptance, first, isn't approval. It's not approval. Much of life falls outside of our control, right? Like we may lose a job, a close family member dies, a marriage ends, a traumatic event happens, maybe we become chronically ill or just ill for a short period of time. All these situations are not things that we would choose or approve of, right? Nobody's laying around going, gosh, I just really wish I could develop a respiratory condition, so I have to go to the hospital, right? Nobody says, man, I just can't wait for my annual colonoscopy so that they can find spots in my colon. You know what I mean? Like nobody wants that. Nobody's sitting there dreaming of that, right? Gosh, I can't wait for the day when I get fired unjustly from my job, right? However, we can radically accept that those are all real parts of our life. And failing to do that actually increases our suffering and delays our healing, and it delays our growth, and it holds us back from getting into a problem-solving space, right? So acceptance isn't approval, right? And second, acceptance is not giving in. Like I said earlier, it's not resignation. It's not giving in. It's not giving up. We accept what is in our life. We accept what's in our past. We accept what's in our present moment. Change comes by what we do next, right? In the future. So accepting reality allows us to let go of what we have no control over and look at the power we do actually have. It's a shift towards resilience, which is the ability to recover from difficulties, right? It's the shift into resilience. We let go of resistance, and by the path of radical acceptance, we discover and embody and inhabit resilience. Right? Let me say that again. We let go of our resistance, and through the path of radical acceptance, we discover and embody and inhabit resilience, right? So resilience always begins with accepting that this difficulty exists. Now, this is not easy. This is not easy. Let's just be honest. This is not easy. It can be made easier, though. I think Judy, as Judy says to Betsy, with tacos, nachos, with burger meat and cheddar melted all over the top, and the little banana pepper rings. Yes, we're coming to your house for the next Eat Our Feelings session, Judy. This is not easy. Food can help us get there. Radical acceptance, though, is a deeply internal, it can be a difficult experience because our nature fights against the idea, right? Radical acceptance involves accepting reality for what it is, that everything has a cause. Note, I say cause, not a reason, but a cause, right? Right? And radical acceptance involves accepting that life can be worth living still, even through painful circumstances, right? Radical acceptance helps us hold on to hope, right? Some of us have gone through things where once the initial shock and anger and frustration have worn off, we turn around and start looking for ways to end our lives because we have believed that the shock and trauma have told us that now life is not worth living. Some of us have experienced this. Some of us know people who experienced this. Right? Radical acceptance is what helps us hold on to hope that life can be worth living, even in the midst, not after, not it was worth living before and then the shitty thing happened, but then we just got to get through so we can get back to believing. No, it's even worth living even through painful circumstances, right? That's hope. Okay. Betsy says, I found it helpful on the road to acceptance to begin with a baby step, asking, what if this were true? What if I accepted this as true? Yes. What if I accept that life can be worth living even in the midst of painful circumstances? What doors open, right? What possibilities come into view? What relationships come into my life, right? This is all really what we're talking about on this first step really is a core competency for life and the spiritual journey, right? Like I said, spirituality and healing is really all about finding ways to cope with and even possibly enjoy what is uncontrollable in life, right? The Apostle Paul spoke about finding a way to be content in every circumstance, right? I think contentment isn't light, easy work. I don't think it's about just the warm afterglow of a good meal, right? Or sitting by the fireplace with hot cocoa on a snowy night, right? Or whatever, right? All our sentimental notions of contentment. I think contentment is the release that happens when we look at our reality and we name it and accept it in the present moment, free of the need to judge it or judge others or ourselves. I think that's what contentment is. It's the release that we experience viscerally in our bodies that happens when we look at our reality and name it and accept it in the present moment, free of any need to judge it or others or ourselves. Right. One of my favorite writers and thinkers is a friend of mine. His name's David Dark. And he wrote a book a long time ago called The Sacredness of Questioning Everything. And he teaches in Nashville at a college there, university there. And he says, evil arises out of a desire to control or correct or eradicate something or someone. Evil is a reaction to perceived disorder, right? And see, if you think about it, all our burdens, our conflicts with others, they all rise out of a need to judge and thereby control or correct. Oftentimes what isn't ours to control or correct, right? So you can radically accept reality. I can get to a place where I radically accept reality. We live in a broken world with broken people, right? We're part of that. Whatever's going on in your life that is outside of your control, you can accept it. You can accept it. The difficult person, you can accept them for who they are. You may wish they would change, but you have no power to change them. And that challenge you're facing, whether it's a loss of job or physical disability, loss of a relationship, unfair treatment, a large amount of work at home or work or school, you can accept it. That's what it is right now. It's the reality of this moment, right? Not in a dismissive way, but it is what it is, right? And wishing circumstances were different doesn't change reality, and it doesn't empower you for the next moment. Wishing being trapped there is resistance, right? It doesn't empower you for the next moment. So you need to accept it. Change, growth, and hope begin with acceptance. And acceptance then is what breaks open your spirit to find the energy to change what can be changed. See? Acceptance is the key to freeing your mind and discovering your capacity for an imagination for transformation. The resistance, I can think my way out of this, I can criticize my way out of this, I can argue my way out of this. That's just more shutting down. That's creating this interior spiritual gridlock, right? But acceptance is the key to freeing your mind and discovering your capacity for an imagination for transformation, right? It's like that scene in the movie Titanic when they tell them full reverse and it goes to the big, turbines going in the heart and in the guts of the ship, and they're going, and then they hit the reverse radically as it's chugging along this way, and the thing goes, it does that, right? Until what? Until the momentum of the reverse kicks in, and then it goes and keeps going backwards, right? Acceptance is the thing that pushes the turbines of your soul into that right direction to function properly, as opposed to being gridlocked like this, right? I can think my way out of it. We're going to keep going forward in this direction, even if it's over a cliff, right? No, right? So acceptance breaks us out of that kind of short-circuited, gridlocked spiritual state, right? So that we're suddenly able to see again, that we're able to have an imagination for transformation, that we're able to let go of what needs to be let go of, no matter how painful it may be, to let the dead bury the dead, right? Acceptance breaks you out of these deeply evolutionary responses that are embedded in our minds, right? Of flight or fight or freeze, right? So what are you resisting accepting? What are you resisting accepting? Right? How has your resistance increased your suffering? Right? Sometimes we manifest like our psychic pain, right? Like our psychological, our psycho-emotional, spiritual state sometimes manifests itself then physically, right? Right. We know that like lower back pain is connected to depression oftentimes, right? Sometimes it's not that deep. You just strained yourself because you're bending over wrong, right? But we know that sometimes it manifests, right? How has our resistance increased our suffering? What are you resisting accepting in your life? And how does that resistance increase your suffering? Right? I don't want to say that in a way of like blame yourself. There's another thing you're doing wrong. That's not what I'm getting at, right? I just want you to be able to take an inventory and name it, right? So you get clear on what is, right? So you can see. And how do you think acceptance might enable you and empower you for what's next, right? Right? I'm going to put these 3 questions in the chat for people in the chat watching it on the replay. What are you resisting accepting, and how has that resistance increased your suffering? And how do you think your acceptance, what if, right? Like Betsy asks, what if you stepped into radical acceptance and stopped resisting? What would be possible? What would be possible? Something to think about. I hope you'll chew on it this week. Amen. Oh, spiritual direction and soul care. You are amazing. I'm so glad that you've been on this call with us, either on the broadcast or on the replay. I am so glad that we can start this journey on thriving in uncertainty. If you're watching on the replay, just react to comments, put in your comments, put in your answers to the question. Some of us come back and we look at this stuff all the time. Let us know what are the ways that we can be supporting you in this journey of walking into acceptance, of letting go of resistance. Just let us know. And come join us. Come join us on September 15th. That's this Wednesday for midweek meditation on the Zoom link that you can find on the Facebook page under the events. It is going to be great. We had a great time a couple weeks ago. Come join us. Just come join us. Bring maybe a little notebook. Sometimes we do a little debrief, reflection, and sharing after we do the guided meditations. We're starting with smaller chunks of guided meditations, really easily digestible stuff. But no matter where you are, just come on and jump in. We can't wait to be together. You guys are amazing. Thanks so much for your wisdom. I would not want to do this without you guys and your wisdom and our conversations here. I'm so glad we could do it. Invite a friend, come check out the Facebook page, get people to join the group, invite all your friends. This journey is going to be so good. And I think it's very timely for what we're doing now and what we're facing now in these days. All right. You guys are amazing. I'm going to play some music on the way out and we'll see you guys later.
You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you've tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet.